The plan is simple.
Boys, today we are jacking it to AI girlfriends.
That cat looks really stressed.
You know what? I was really hard for me. I wanted to stream. I was gonna stream Hogwarts Legacy just for those sweet controversy views because people are just going on people's things and just harassing people, and I wanted that. You know?
It should have been me.
Pirate it illegally.
Okay. Well, I don't.
And then play it on stream, but don't show it.
I don't have the qualms
playing.
that people have about it as much. Because like then I wouldn't buy anything because you know like I buy stuff on Amazon. Jeffrey Bezos, he gets all that money. He treats his employees really bad. That's worse. So like I don't think it's I don't think not buying Hogwarts Legacy isn't that much of a statement. Actually, I'm not buying it because
you're gonna say something nice.
Because I saw a lot of reviews saying it wasn't a very good game, and that's why
I also heard that.
That's why I'm not gonna buy it. If it was a busting game though, you know I'd be playing the shit out of that.
Do you even like Harry Potter?
I like it okay. Yeah, I don't like Harry Potter fans.
That's fair.
I don't like J.K. Rowling that much, obviously, but I do like. I read all the Harry Potter books. Yeah.
Nerd.
I like the idea of Harry Potter. You know, I like the school / wizardy thing. That sounds fun, but.
Shadow Wizard Money Gang?
Yeah, Shadow Wizard Money Gang. I love casting spells. But yeah, no, I think all the good world building for like Harry Potter has come from like not J.K. Rowling.
I agree.
I prefer Wizards of Waverly Place.
But I don't think like I think it's a bad online take to be like if you buy Harry Potter, you hate trans people. That's an online take. That's a bad take. But
yeah, you can just normally hate trans people.
Yeah. Well, I mean, no. It's just like why does it mean you hate trans people? Like what? But if you actually want me to play it, I will play it. I don't care. I'll get that sweet controversy views.
You can play it, but every time something cringe happens, you have to donate to
I'm dead.
a trans.
That's fine.
Trans
well, what I was
charity.
thinking of, and this kind of is gonna like show like on the place. It's just let's say I buy it for $50. I just donate double that to a charity. You know what I mean? Like for trans rights or whatever.
So one trans.
Yeah, for one trans
Hear me
person.
out.
And then like no, the thing is because then if anybody bitches at you, it's like well you don't actually care. You just want to
A heist.
Okay.
Hear me out. Let me finish.
You're
a heist, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
We just steal back all the money from JK.
Yeah.
Yeah.
From
I'm
the
there for
old
that.
fucking janky cranky, whatever the fuck that stands for.
Janky cranky Kong.
No, don't associate him.
Yeah, okay, that's fair.
You don't put that on the Kong family.
They're not that bananas.
Honestly,
they're
Austin,
pretty
that's the
bananas.
funniest shit you ever said.
That might be one of the funniest things. Yeah.
It was up there, like low key. That shit was good. You were quick. You were on it. You were with it.
So,
That was
Zach, are you gonna ever play, or what's the?
good. Bitch, I want to, but Epic Games. Let me tell you about Epic Games.
Yeah. Give me the deets on Epic Games.
For one, they don't pay artists well enough. I've heard that. Bullshit. Their
Say about
client, though. Let's get to the real issues. That was a real issue.
Yes.
I think that artists should be paid. But
Yes.
the client.
Mm-hmm.
The Epic Games client. I downloaded it on this PC
It's the worst thing ever.
over 2 years ago for the free games, right? They give a lot of free games away. It's the only thing they can do for people to download their client.
Okay.
And then 2 years later, 2.5 years later, whenever the fuck it was, Fortnite drops Dragon Ball Z. Zach's like, let's play Fortnite. That, it didn't happen in that exact order, but actually opposite order. Whatever. Now we play Fortnite. And fuck this shit, man. It just doesn't want me to. I spent a lot of money on Fortnite. Let me play it.
You gotta not spend money on it like me. And then, whoa, what the fuck? Why is there a
Bro,
buff cat here?
I think you have just as many skins as I do.
Yeah, but I mean, I got them gifted to me.
Most of mine have been gifted.
Okay, yeah. But do you have more emails?
Guys, you're all cringe. We don't have to fight.
Let's talk about why you hate fantasy, Austin.
You're
As
listening.
someone
That
who
was
loves
wrong.
both and
I
possibly
also
loves
love both.
sci-fi more.
Yes.
As someone who's based,
So my thing is, I think Austin knows though because
We'll give the background first.
because he didn't respond to my tweet about it.
So Doomino Crossing tweeted, "My sole Hogwarts Legacy take is that sci-fi is infinitely cooler, mesmerizing, and thought-provoking than the fantasy genre, and I genuinely cannot comprehend how someone else could come to the opposite conclusion."
Wait. Can we dissect that for a second though?
yeah, sure.
That's like saying, "Yo, red's so much better than blue," and I can't understand why anybody would think otherwise. But also,
My mouth's also dry.
I think calling Harry Potter like super fantasy, like indicative of most fantasy, is kind of
they have cars and watch.
Yeah, it's kind of a stretch. It's kind of a stretch.
Wait. We're talking over each other. What's going on?
Science. And is it not a
I'm saying Harry Potter's not really fantasy all that much. Like, and when you think of other, it is, but I mean, it's fantasy like Star Wars is fantasy too.
It's also young adult fantasy.
Yeah, it's not the same as like if you were gonna look at like Lord of the Rings or something. It's not fantasy like that because it's set in our world. There's just also magic.
It's not high fantasy.
It's not. Yeah, it's not high fantasy.
What's the difference between fantasy and high fantasy then?
Fucking weed.
Yeah, weed.
I actually took a class on sci-fi and like its origins or whatever for like an unrelated thing. It was supposed to be like my senior like thesis class or whatever. And the big thing with sci-fi that like differentiates it from a lot of things is kind of like that what if of like, okay, for like, you know, typical kind of stuff like Star Trek, like, oh, what if like space travel was a thing, or like kind of like this, you know, whatever, like what if we had like this kind of ability where if like from what I understand, I'm not huge into fantasy, I don't know for sure, but I think fantasy is more of like that mythos of like, oh, like this in another land kind of a thing for the most part.
Can be, but again, I mean, not be. I mean,
oh, yeah,
I guess if you count like Harry Potter's not
like,
that.
Sounds like
Harry Potter is
saying.
What you're saying sci-fi is, just with fantasy. Harry Potter is sci-fi then. Because like, what if we could do this in our world? What if we could do this?
What if there was like magic? But I feel like that's the core of like.
It feels kind of like.
No, but that's what. But that like, what if we could like space travel? I guess you're like saying, but like sci-fi, the way it is today, it is just magic. Like it's not actually like most sci-fi. It is just like force powers. That's magic. Mass Effect, being able to use like the element zero or whatever. That is magic.
Even less like things that are just magic, but in space, like the Force and fucking biotics and shit in Mass Effect. But like the fictional technology, like the alien technology.
Chozo, yeah. Let's talk about Metroid.
Like
that's magic.
That really, like it's all.
Yeah,
essentially magic.
It is just a black box. It is just a black box. It's the same.
All of cyberspace shit and like hacking in fiction is generally magic.
It's just it's treated. It has the same like purpose. It could be
like the same like plot device kind of.
No, it is, but that's the issue that you have is that it's used as a plot device. But I'm saying even what you're saying that is better uses the same plot device. It's used as in the same way. Also, you know, it's kind of weird. Like all your favorite games tend to be like fantasy. Legend of Zelda.
I don't know. Zelda.
Any Dark Souls, any From Software game, actually, any From.
I wouldn't really
game.
like. I'd say
he says Elden Ring's mid.
But, yeah, I do say Elden Ring's mid.
Yeah, that's how you know he has bad opinions already.
I love you, but God.
I have justifiable reasons.
Bloodborne is fantasy.
Yeah, I would say so.
So Dark Souls, fantasy. If it walks like a duck and acts like a duck, it's a duck. If half of your favorite games are, I'm not saying they are, but if half of your favorite games are fantasy, you like fantasy. I don't care if you say you do or not, you still do. Like, it's not, that doesn't make sense.
Well, the thing is with that, is that I feel like with magic, like, I do agree that they both, like, fill that niche, because, like, it's like basically like a fantasy and sci-fi, they have like, they accomplish the same goals, but like in different ways, I would say.
I wouldn't say they're in different ways, though, what I'm talking about. I think it's just an aesthetic difference.
I mean, through different means,
and that's fine if you just, but that's the issue. That's what I'm saying is you just don't like it aesthetically. Like that, because functionally they're the same. I'm not saying every sci-fi is like that. I'm just saying, like, if it's something that like we don't know how to explain it, like the mass relays in fucking Mass Effect. If it's something like we don't know how to explain it, it's just this ancient technology that we found. It is the same thing as magic. It's just not called magic because there's no science fiction basis for it. It's just something that exists that they say, well, we were exposed to this element zero and now we can do this. That's just magic. That is actually to a T. It's the same exact thing.
Where I feel like the differences with like magic is like is it comes from like that mythos or whatever. Like this is like a part of the world, versus where like in sci-fi it was something that was like tangible and created and is like grounded. Therefore, like,
but it's not.
I feel like
but like,
easier.
But like that kind of stuff isn't what the examples I gave aren't grounded. They're grounded just the same.
I don't know anything about Mass Effect, so I can't.
No, I know, but
really
I'm saying like it's not just because there's world building around it. There's world building around magic too. Again, the only difference that you're saying is an aesthetic difference. Like that I can actually tangibly grasp from what you're saying. Zach, if you are seeing this differently than me, just to get a separate point of view here.
Like my entire take on it is mostly that, like, the two genres, I think do occasionally, not even occasionally, but like even just like thematically or aesthetically kind of accomplish different goals to a degree, but the two genres meld so much that, like, at this point, my opinion would be that, like, the only real differences are primarily aesthetic, especially if you're, like, actually focusing on mostly just gaming. I think if you go into, like, the literary world or even, like, cinema or TV, I think it starts to separate a little bit more.
Yeah. And I'm speaking from a gaming standpoint.
I would argue that the two genres meld so closely together that, like, the argument is primarily just aesthetic at that point.
And if we want to go, like, obviously my opinion might change if we're talking about, like, TV shows and shit. The tweet was just about a video game, so I'm keeping it about video games.
But I'm just a dude. You know?
Aren't we all? When somebody tells me, like,
Party time.
like, okay, there's this cool new fantasy thing coming out, I'm like, okay, how is it going to be, like, any different than anything we've seen? I see, like an epic fantasy adventure of, like, oh, we're going to have, like, guys, and it's going to be elves, and we're going to go on a long trip that bores me to death. Like, I feel like a lot of people, like, that's what I mean by, like, derive in terms of, like, I don't think a lot of people are, like, pushing the boundaries of what fantasy can be.
But I'd say that about sci-fi, too. I think that same issue. I think
it's equally fair to say that with sci-fi.
You just, like, that's what I'm saying. You just don't like the fantasy, like, the way that is the medium of it. But the same problems you have with it that you're expressing are issues with sci-fi as well. That's all. That's all I'm trying to say.
Yeah, no. I wouldn't say you're wrong, but I guess you could try to say that about, like, most.
No, yeah, that's why I think.
Is there any, like, not examples?
Yeah,
like,
no. Sports games,
which is why at that point it kind of feels
drama.
Like,
you just don't like fantasy as a genre, like a thing.
Well, it just at that point it just feels like the only real, like, preference at that point would just be aesthetic.
Yeah, and that's all I was trying to say. It's like, because functionally they're not that different.
But even with, like, themes and, like, character to building, world building, there are, like, pretty big differences in the way it's done, where, like, just inherently most sci-fi tends to go towards future, whereas most fantasy does tend to go, like, past, generally speaking.
Well, that I would say that is mostly just a visual, that is mostly just aesthetic. But
well, it can have some, like, plot differences, obviously, and some things are going to be built on, like inherently, even, like, as a plot device, I think magic and, like, fictional technology do so, like, they serve the exact same purpose.
Basically, what I'm saying is most fantasy games and sci-fi games, just in terms of gaming, you could put the plot of one into the plot of the other and change around a couple words, like what things are called, and it would be the same game.
Would you consider Dragon Ball sci-fi or fantasy?
I'd say fantasy.
Why? It's
set in the future,
and spaceship and time travel.
Exactly.
I'd say it's based more on mythos and has.
I would say Dragon Ball.
Also, wait, yeah.
Dragon Ball Z, definitely not.
Let's talk about this.
Dragon Ball Z is sci-fi.
Dead Space, I would argue, is more fantasy than sci-fi.
I feel like it fits more the tropes of sci-fi.
How? It's just a magic. It's just a fucking a Deus Ex Machina that comes by. It's just Lovecraftian. It's Lovecraftian horror. Anything that has to do with the necromorphs. How is that sci-fi? How is that sci-fi? How is it sci-fi?
Well, the marker was human made. It was like just because something
It also wasn't human made. Do you not actually know the story of that?
The marker in the game is made by
in that game, but not the markers aren't. That's not the first marker.
Yeah,
ever.
it was found because it was crash landed in.
Yeah, it was just something that people found, and it's just an extinction event because there's no there's no actual, like, technologically or, like, any actual rhyme or reason of why they turn. Like, why the markers work the way they do? Like, why necromorphs work? I would say that's not technologically, that's more magic than anything else.
So do you think, not exactly on this point, but do you think that anything, like, not grounded in reality is, like, basically magic at that point?
I mean, that by definition, yes. Yes, it is. We should have a podcast where we just talk about we just debate nerdy things that don't matter.
God, no.
It's because you're afraid you're going to get these ratios all the time?
No.
Super entertaining, been chillin' and listening.
Who do you agree with, me or Austin? Chat.
I agree with the Lord Jesus Christ. You both made sense, honestly. Id to vote for LOL.
Again.
They say we both make sense. Chat just doesn't want to play favorites. They don't want to get trouble. They don't want to pick between mom and dad. I get it.
I like both sides.
Yeah. It's like, now please don't split up.
Y'all are both wrong. Please get a divorce.
Fucking-
Whatever gets me 2 Christmas presents.
That's fair.
Austin's cringe.
Yeah. Austin is kind of cringe, but like we love him anyways.
He's not actually,
Despite
but he
his
also
cringe.
is.
Okay. Austin, how does it feel being cringe?
It's got a base, honestly.
He's
So
done
Fortnite.
it again.
Is it sci-fi or fantasy?
It's religion. So fantasy.
I'm gonna go
You like
with erotic horror.
It's only scary for you.
It's only erotic for me.
I overheard a
That
bit
is
where
bad,
you
bad.
said you could
Alright, everything's
change any
cool. Everything's
fantasy
cool.
story into sci-fi and it
Fine.
wouldn't affect
Drift it
anything.
away.
Can't imagine Harry Potter going to a technology and Bitcoin school or some shit.
If you took Hades and then you
He's nuts.
and you gave Zagreus a cool lab coat and sunglasses, and
Austin, that's a magic game with a gun in it.
so it's sci-fi.
Essentially, yeah, it would be. If you just replaced all the stuff with like weird technological powers, yeah, it would be sci-fi. Yeah. I play more fantasy
Non-fiction.
sci-fi games than Austin does too.
Most people play more games than me.
That's true. So why do you
Austin
have
plays
exactly? So
two
what
games.
makes you feel qualified to have these bad takes? Quick question, actual question. Doom, is that a sci-fi or fantasy? Because it's demons and shit.
Religious.
It's so fantasy. It's so
There's
fantasy.
a guy.
You know what I mean? I'm not saying there's a right answer. I'm just saying that's how like close they are, and like it's hard to.
Is Metal Gear Solid a fantasy or sci-fi?
Metal Gear is sci-fi. That was sci-fi.
I've seen. You think Quiet's not my fantasy?
You know, I did think of the ramifications of us having that discussion on stream, because now that's probably one of the channel's inside jokes. Is if
Oh
it's
god,
if
that's
a
right.
game
Oh
is,
no.
it's been asked
Fortnite
like
Friday.
3 times in chat now. So
Zach, is your channel more sci-fi or fantasy?
I'm
How
going
great
to
I am.
ask
I think
that
it's more
every time I
fantasy.
hear a video game now.
yeah,
That is a fantasy of yours.
I was gonna say that it's a fantasy because it must be I'm fantasizing about my channel taking off because it's not gonna.
Well, boys, another Fortnite Friday in the books.
Sometimes you fort, sometimes you night.
It's been a grand
Tonight
old
we
time.
lost.
Thank you everybody that showed up to stream.
Yeah.
Bye bye gamers.